Hey guys, welcome to lesson 2 of Shonko's Python for Kids. Now, in today's lesson, we are going to understand how objects work and how to create an object. We are going to understand data types, functions, and how to create one. And we're also going to understand bugs and how to handle bugs. But before you proceed with this lesson, you would have to create an account on Ripple and join the Shonko Python for Kids team. All the instructions to be able to do all of that is in the email we sent to you. Okay, so do all to do that before you proceed with this lesson. Okay, so objects. Now, there's a saying all coders like to say, or all Python programmers like to say, that everything is an object in Python. Now, what's an object? An object is a collection of data variables and methods or functions that act on those data. This object could have properties that define it. Now, I'm sure there are a couple of words in there, the definition of what an object is, that are confusing some of you. Words like variables, methods, and maybe data. But we'll discuss all that as we proceed in the lesson. So, an object in real life could basically be anything that's around us. It could be a pen, it could be a toy car, it could be a chair, a table, a television, anything. So we are going to use this diagram to try to understand the definition of what an object is, as discussed in the previous slide. So one of my favorite things in the world is a Tesla, and we are going to look at the Tesla as an object. So objects like real life objects, we know have properties or attributes. They have a size, they have a color, they have a weight, and they have a weight, they have texture and all that. So my Tesla as an object comes with attributes or properties like size, color. We are assuming that my Tesla is a black Tesla and say it has a speed of 250 miles per hour. And objects also come with functions. These are things that the object can do. So an object like Tesla, which is a car obviously, should have the function that will allow it to drive, to brake, to reverse, accelerate, and do other functions that cars can do. Now, real life objects are very much like objects in our programming language or Python. And they hold or they carry these same properties and functions that real life objects have. Now, there are different types of objects in our Python programming language. We have integers, we have floats, we have strings, we have lists, dictionaries, and there are a whole list of them. Let's delve into them. So we have two types of objects that fall under numbers, and these are integers. They are basically whole numbers, or they are basically counting numbers from 0, 1, 2, 3 to infinity. Now the second object type we have under numbers are floats, and these are basically decimal numbers. We would see how these data types react differently in our IDE. That's the Ripple IDE we've created. But we'll do that in our third week. So that will happen when we have our third class, our third lesson. Now let's proceed to the next object type, which is strings. Strings are basically a set of characters, usually enclosed within quotation marks. So it could be any set of characters, but then we have to put them in quotation marks to identify them as strings. So it could be a sentence, it could be a word. You could actually put numbers within the quotation marks. Now, numbers within the quotation marks are no longer considered to be either floats or integers. They are considered to be strings. We'll get to further understand how these relate to Python when we are working them out in our IDE. We also have object types called booleans. Now, these are data types that contain the value true or false. We have other data types like lists, dictionaries, which would actually not be looking into because they are not within our scope of study for now. Now, there's another term which was in our definition of what Python is, of what an object is, and this is variables. Now, you can imagine a variable to be a box that holds other things. So we can imagine a variable to be a box that contains maybe a mouse or some pens or some books. Basically, that's what variables are. They are containers. They are used to hold data. So variables are basically containers that hold data, and they are liable to change. Thus, you can actually change the content of a variable. You could replace it. You could have a variable that actually holds pens, and then you could replace it, take out the pens, and then put books in there. Now, there are different types of, not different types of variables, but then variables have, should I say, a sister called constants. Would actually look in them in our third lesson. Look at them in our third lesson. Constants, unlike variables, cannot be changed. They are just like variables, with the exception that whatever has been assigned to a constant or whatever a constant holds in it cannot be changed. It's permanent. Now, to be able to assign a variable, we use an assignment statement, and this is used to store values inside a variable. We'll see how this is done in our IDE in our third lesson. And you should note the difference between an assignment operator and the equal to comparison sign. Now, the assignment statement is the everyday equal to sign we know. But then in programming language, the equal to sign is used to assign a variable to a particular data type, or an object. So if we want to assign a variable to a pen, we use the equal to sign as the assignment statement. While encoding, if you'd want to actually state that an answer or maybe something is equal to another thing, or as a form of a comparison, or as a comparison operator, as it's usually called, we actually use two equal to signs. We'll see how all of these work in our IDE in our third lesson. Now, another thing we would need to understand is how to comment in Python. Now, commenting in Python or commenting in programs or codes actually help the author to be able to revisit his code or his program and understand what he did initially. It also helps other people who try to read and understand the code to understand what the intent of the code was. Because sometimes reading code can be really hectic. Trying to understand what the author of the code wrote. It's actually a good practice to comment in your code to enable you understand the code as the author and also other readers of the code. Now, to comment on your code, we actually use the hash symbol. We start the line with the hash symbol and then proceed to type whatever it is we want to comment within the code. We'll further see how all of these work in our ID in our third lesson. Okay, so that was brief, and we've come to the end of our lesson 2. In our third week, we'll be dealing with alert. So I'd urge you to actually prepare and show up for Strong Close Python for Kids third lesson. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was informative. See you in the class in the next lesson.